Welcome to City Circus, community created on Shaw TV. I'm your host, Marty Gold, here in the middle of our supposed summer break. Matters at City Hall so important that we have made the effort to do a review. We're going to be reviewing both the City Council meeting about the real estate transactions, that audit that was done by E&Y, Ernst & Young, and then the second half of the program, we're going to go over the fireworks from last week with regards to the police headquarters audit conducted by KPMG. Mayor Katz, going back a couple of weeks now to when he had the opportunity to question the Ernst & Young auditors, of course, he's in full cover-up mode. He asked questions about why weren't the past CEOs interviewed since a number of the projects commenced under their stewardship, and also wondering why the council wasn't cautioned about restrictions involving the use of possible legal liability and divulging the information within the audit. Not really looking for an offensive, but more so looking for little angles, chinks in the armor, etc. None of which have proven to gain any traction with the public. The public can see through this, and frankly, so do a number of the councillors. We're going to look firstly at the opportunity that Russ Wyatt had, along with other members of council, to ask questions of the acting CAO, Deepak Joshi. This was giving the administration an opportunity to explain themselves about the horrifying revelations in the real estate audit, the repeated instances of favoritism, of basically bid rigging, of ignoring rules meant to protect you, the taxpayer. In particular, in this clip, Wyatt focuses in on the water park, parcel 4, and the valuation. Watch how Joshi addresses the question of whether the administration, which means under Phil Schiegel when he was in that chair, but whether they try to slip something past the councillors or not.
As a matter for clarification, so what you're saying is the intent of the public service was not to refrain from providing information to council, is what you're arguing in terms, I think what I'm picking up on, in terms of the whole issue. The auditor is arguing that the 10 million should have been reported in terms of that report, and I just need clarification on that.
Madam Speaker, there was no intent on the part of the public service to hide anything. And as the auditor stated earlier, there is always the benefit of hindsight. And as the auditor went through the process, has identified process and procedures which the public service has embraced about proper documentation and providing some of those types of information. And the benefit of hindsight, that might be the case. What we're talking about today is that there was a report that went forward, and that report was in a discussion for an EOI and a proposal for a water park, and what was the value of the land based on a water park and a hotel that it was going to be used for. You may recall, Madam Speaker, that we just recently went forward with a proposal for parcel 4 with the Forks proposal. In that proposal, there will be an evaluation based on the type of proposal that the Forks is putting forward, and the public service has written that into the recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Wyatt, we will start the clock for yourself now.
I had another question.
3 questions.
Oh.
We're going to follow the same format.
Well, okay, I would request suspension of the rules so I can ask another question.
Okay. All those in favor? Yep.
Joshi was extraordinarily nervous in answering questions from Wyatt as well as some of the other councillors. They had a lengthy discussion about that Midtown car wash. And you know what people haven't figured out is the scam with the Midtown car wash wasn't only that the city sold at a loss, but how much of an opportunity does that create for people after they buy it at a cheap price to flip it and make money, again, at the taxpayer's expense over a car wash that supposedly wasn't going to be able to operate anymore. This notion that we were saving money by not going through whatever other processes, utter nonsense. And this was flagged on our radio program back in the day, the Great Canadian Talk Show. The only media outlet that even caught on there was something fishy about that Midtown car wash deal. Into the discussion itself, the debates at council, Councillor Havixbeck got on her feet, and she talked about how saddened she was about this situation and how she tried to hold Phil Schiegel to account. And watch firstly how Councillor Swandel, the mayor's attack dog, how he jumped up about, oh, you can't cast aspersions, and then the mayor directly attacking Havixbeck, viciously attacking Havixbeck. The question is, was it over whether he really made a phone call or whether you really reamed her out because she dared to put Phil Schiegel on the hot seat. You be the judge.
If the acting CAO briefed the mayor and briefed the members of EPC on any of the findings in this audit.
You're calling into question performance, and we are not reviewing performance here. We have an audit in front of us. That's the item we're speaking to. So if you have any specific questions that require clarification, you can proceed. Would you like to speak to the item?
Not yet,
Okay.
no.
Any further speakers? Yes.
They ask their questions and then they speak to the item
That's
and then
right.
they're finished.
That's
And
right.
I think that's the process we agreed on.
Yes.
It's not trying to shut anyone down. It's trying to show a proper process that people shouldn't be abusing,
That's
Madam
right.
Speaker.
Madam Speaker, then point of order. Are you going back to Councillor Wyatt since
He
we've
decided
assumed
not to speak.
he's
No,
not speaking,
no,
period,
not.
then? Fine. Fine. You know what?
You've changed your mind? You'd like to speak on the motion?
Yes, of course I'll speak. You know, I think that, first of all, the process has not been clear. I wrote the clerk for clarification about how this day would be handled. We've received no clarification. It's been kind of as we go. And I'll leave that as an aside. But, you know, 4 years ago, nearly to the day, I decided to run for council. And I was excited about what I could do for our community and for our city. And citizens put their trust in me when they voted for me. They put their trust in all of us when they voted for us. And I thought this was going to be an opportunity to create a better city. And I cannot believe that on the last of the 3 council meetings that we will potentially have, that we are poring over, sorting through, trying to get to the bottom of what went on over the last 4 years. And I'm saddened, and I think it's disgraceful for City Hall. I'm saddened for what this council has been reduced to, because I feel duped, stonewalled. I feel that I am convinced that I had to be convinced to support things along the way. This council has had its powers stripped, and the public recognizes that. We are now reduced to being a steering body, essentially. Council is supposed to make the decisions, and the administration is supposed to be carrying it out. And I believe that people at the top are aware of things. I can't get the answers to that, but I believe that they are. And
as the good councillor knows, are not appropriate for this chamber.
right.
So noted.
I believe there are transactions still in progress right now that are still, we will still see, and if we were to look back on them now, in 5 years, would be subject to the same things happening. As a former member of Executive Policy Committee, I am well aware of how decisions get made. They are made behind closed doors, in a broken system. I know how reports are shaped. I know how they come out. And the public service is often literally told what to do and how to shape them. I have seen it. When I suspected something was wrong on fire halls and the processes there, I held the former CAO accountable. I insisted he be present at the Standing Policy Committee. He sat through the morning budget deliberations for 3 hours, and then he was asked questions by a committee for 3.5 hours. I recall the mayor was furious with me, and he called to tell me so. Prior to that,
that is an absolute lie. An absolute lie, and not the first lie. And I'll give you another example right now. Just the other day, we were told by the same individual that the auditor said something to her, which even the auditor and the clerk said was wrong.
This is not relevant to
I'm not
my
listening to any more
presentation.
lies. I would like an apology.
today we have the truth before us in a report.
Madam Speaker, I believe there was a point of order there. Those type of characterizations are very specifically mentioned in our procedures bylaw. And it's important, I believe, that we shut this down now. This person cannot be allowed to do this and leave this stuff hanging out there. There are people, some of us work here, believing that we have great integrity and honor when we come to work every day.
Thank
And
you.
to be painted by the likes of that?
Fine,
Councillor-
Madam
Councillor
Speaker, I will
Havixbeck.
withdraw my comments and apologize for referencing a phone call then.
Would you like to take a few minutes, because I see you're reading from a script?
Yes,
and
I have my
maybe rephrase
speech
some of your
prepared.
comments?
No, I'm prepared
You
to
may
carry on.
proceed.
Unbelievable how the mayor could not only use an unparliamentary word, calling Havixbeck a liar, although about what exactly nobody's sure, but then launched into a second set on the first time. I want an apology. And Devi Sharma, the speaker, let him do it. Now that is bizarre. Her obligation as speaker would have been to immediately caution the mayor against using such language, then maybe address whatever started it, maybe. But you see the tactic of Swandel, and Swandel, reducing Havixbeck, as the Black Rod put it, to a thing, the likes of that. So you see, the minute there's criticism, the reflection of what everybody thinks, that people knew they were bending rules to favor their friends, to favor friends of the mayor, they leap to their feet and they make it sound like there's something wrong with the people who are trying to protect the taxpayer. And Swandel carried with that theme in his own a little speech. And he not only attacked Havixbeck, now he goes after people like Colin Craig of the Taxpayers Federation and Brian Kelsey. Listen to how he explains how some or other people who've stood for transparency and accountability, for proper contract procedures, how this is all their fault.
I just want to start by saying that when it comes to dealing with the province, if you truly believe this is an audit, you don't need to support anything further than that, because the audit, if you want to call it that, tells you that there's nothing material. Nothing would rise to the level of materiality. And so now what you're going to do is you're going to forward something to the province will turn around and say, well, the auditor said this is not material, and there's nothing here to deal with. That would be the end of the conversation, unless you want to politically position something so you can try and make it the province's issue, and then say, oh yeah, look, see, they behave the same way as those people at the city. So let's look at how those people at the city behave. And I'll tell you, for all three of the amendments, I don't support any of them. I think we've got enough information here. The recommendations are clear. But you got to ask yourself, why did this come about? And it was good that Mr. Craig used the term culture of deal making, because I want to remind you how that culture of deal making was created. There was a time, 04, 05, 06, there was a great deal of talk about running this place more like a business. We needed to get deal makers in here. We needed to get things going. As a matter of fact, during some of that time, I think the key players in some of that culture of deal making and red tape commissions and our policy advisors were Brian Kelsey and Colin Craig themselves. That's what they wanted. They wanted us to run this place. That's how taxpayers were going to get value. Run this place more like a business. Get deal makers in here. So we went down that path. We got deal makers in here. We had a huge agenda. We had an opportunity to build 4 new fire stations, an opportunity to do the 4-district model. I think at one point it was actually the 3-district model. We had an opportunity, or we had a need to deal with this crumbling police headquarters building. And at the same time, we had really tight timelines put upon us. This is a theme you're going to see here. It's about context. And so you get those timelines put upon you and you start going forward and you want to get it done. And you're all aware of the challenges and you're all aware of all the, I look at this, I just figured, well, let's go to the sort of the genesis, the root of this. Like, how did it start? It started when we all agreed that when the transit, director says we need to do this land swap, we've got to figure out it's good value. When the transit director says that for the sake of rapid transit, we all say, okay, let's get it done. We understand that when we're dealing with the Winnipeg Square Parkade, that the business case that was put to us on 3 occasions. I'm surprised that the auditor did not make reference to any of the business case proposals that were put forward by the special operating agency known as the Winnipeg Parking Authority and what these numbers actually meant to the city at that time.
It's all about context, said the developer's best friend at City Hall. And he was talking about anything but the real issues. The Black Rod, the political blog, they put it in context too. Depends, I guess, on which side of the fence you're on. The context was that, starting with the fire hall audit, every successive project that's been studied under the real estate audit by Ernst & Young, it found a pattern, a tip-off from Phil Schiegel to his friends, the use of insider information to secure a contract for a major project, Shindeco's involvement being kept a secret from City Council, and then the extension of one contract to the other for lucrative work, and then abracadabra, as the Black Rat put it, the taxpayers paid Shindeco millions. And did I mention that they still own that fire hall land on Taylor? When we come back from this break, we're going to look at last week's meeting. This about the police headquarters, the cop shop headquarters, the Canada Post debacle. More when we return with City Service.
I started volunteering on the English Soccer Report.
Hi there, I'm Miles. This is Nick. Welcome to another edition of the English Soccer Report.
I got to do everything: lights, camera, audio, editing. Then I was asked to host and produce segments for Switch Night.
What's up, Winnipeg, and welcome to Switch Night. I am your host, Mike Arsenal, your faithful volunteer.
I was trained and given professional equipment to use, free. It's been awesome. Try it. You could be the next host of Switch or Switch Night. See where it takes you.
Safeway Goldeyes Baseball is back for another exciting season live on Shaw TV. On Tuesday, July 29th at 7 p.m., join us for the American Association All-Star Game, brought to you by Safeway, only on Shaw TV.
Whether you're pursuing a television career or looking for a new leisure activity, we invite you to join the Shaw TV Volunteer Program. You can gain valuable hands-on experience and acquire skills ranging from camera to floor directing. We're looking for high school or college students or adults who are eager to learn. Shaw TV is currently accepting volunteer applications. Contact us today.
We're there to bring it home. Shaw TV, your local voice.
Back from La Vérendrye Park in St. Boniface and Danny Vandel's ward. And Vandel, among the many councillors that just They can smell the odor. They know what's going on. I'll tell you somebody else that smells what's bad at City Hall. David Saunders. He's been a thorn in the side of the administration and many of the defenders of corruption for some time. Listen to this presentation he made. This is just the tail end of it, actually, about the sorry saga of civic ineptitude. He quotes the KPMG audit about the police headquarters, the Canada Post transaction. Lacking transparency and accountability. What do we always talk about on this program? And there was Saunders pointing out the auditors were on our side in that one. And no record of the discussions that took place that led to this debacle over on Graham Avenue. And also, watch what happens when he says somebody lied, and how Devi Sharma, the Speaker, leaps into action. Take a look.
I gather that Council may approve the 25 recommendations and the implementation roadmap this morning or this afternoon, but I have to say that based on my own observations of how this Council and these administrators have behaved during the past year and a half, I have absolutely no confidence that they will be up to the challenge. Last fall, Council adopted all of Ernst & Young's recommendations arising from the Fire Paramedic Stations construction project audit and directed the administration to implement them and report back to Council on a quarterly basis. The administration provided one quarterly report on January 29th, which largely defended its previous actions, and has now failed to submit any further quarterly reports or implementation measures during the last 6 months. KPMG has documented a great many shortcomings of the people and the organizations involved in this sorry saga of civic ineptitude. And I guess my favorite is the revelation on page 6. Quote, "We were told that minutes of the Oversight Committee meetings were not maintained, and as a result there is no record of the discussions which took place or the recommendations and decisions made. In our view, this contributed to an environment lacking transparency and accountability for project outcomes, and also represented a significant barrier to gathering information during the execution of this audit." That's KPMG speaking. When Councillor Havixbeck asked for copies of the minutes of the Major Steering Committee for the new police headquarters project last November, the senior administrators present at EPC declined to produce the documents on the grounds that they contained confidential and sensitive information. Well, I think they lied.
Mr. Saunders, I will caution you when you make such comments.
And what should Council do with all this, Madam Speaker? And what should Council do with all this? By all means, go ahead and approve the KPMG recommendations today, just like you approved the E&Y real estate management audit recommendations last week. But at the same time, please also forward both the complete Turner and Townsend report with appendices and the KPMG report to the Minister of Justice for review. as you did last week. And then hopefully we will have a serious forensic investigation of all these civic debacle.
See? He said somebody was lied to, Havixbeck was lied to, and oh, I have to caution you, but Mayor Katz, he can say anything he wants apparently about somebody lying or not lying. Well, Councillor Havixbeck, here's her opportunity to talk to the KPMG auditors. She asked about this big book of documents, and what about the program director, and how was that contract awarded to two companies but ended up in the hands of just one? Watch the exchange. You'll see her questions, very intelligent and very disturbing answers from the auditors.
On page 6 of the report, there's much discussion about oversight and no record of discussions of minute meetings. Yet when we were in the council seminar yesterday, the CFO held up a big binder of notes or minutes or something. I didn't take a look at it, but we were told that the consultants were provided that binder of minutes or notes or whatever it was. Can the consultants comment on what was in that binder and how they can say it's not minute meetings per se, how they came to that conclusion?
I believe that the binder that was shown to us was minutes and notes from the project team meetings. Our commentary is on minutes of meetings of the Oversight Committee not being maintained. That's the difference.
Second question.
Yes, I want to go back to the project director, and I believe that I, as a councillor, understood that that individual was to be providing some sort of engineering type guidance and services. And I'd like to know from the consultants what exactly was provided from the project director for that $262,000.
Those are essentially contract administration services, which could be described more generally as project management services. So coordination of the design consultant, the contractor, running meetings, engaging with the end user. So not engineering services, but management, which you wouldn't expect normally a lot of deliverables to come out of that. But that's in general the scope of work.
Thank you. Anything further?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Speaker. On page 20 of the report, the last sentence, we observed that the winning proponent of RFP 833-2010 was CAJV. They did not submit a proposal, yet they were awarded the construction contract. Can you explain how that can be?
The winning proponent of that RFP was a joint venture of Caspian and Ackman. The joint venture dissolved, and the request was made to the city to assign the rights and obligations under the contract to Caspian, which was done. So Caspian ended up with the construction contract through an assignment of the rights and obligations of the Caspian-Ackman joint venture, who was the winning proponent of the RFP.
Amazing, isn't it, how a contract can just be assigned and nobody's explained why the one partner walked away and the other remained. And then there's also questions about the bond change. Mayor Katz got into that with the auditors too. So again, watch him dance around what the real issues are. And the answer about this matter of the contingency not being big enough. Watch the mayor begin the program to start sliding the blame over away from Phil Schiegel and on other people. Here's the mayor with the auditors in the debate.
Mark, you were asked the question yesterday at the council seminar and again today regarding the bond change. And I can also let you know that there's been some talk about that in the media. Your answer yesterday when asked that question, I quote, was quite common. Is that still the way you feel today?
In response to which question?
The change in bond, surety bond. How it changed from where it was at the beginning and then moved down.
I guess what I would say is that it's not unusual for a project owner to change the requirements, surety requirements, after they have a contractor on board.
Okay. As well, yesterday we talked about the contingency, and I'm going in with the 130 million plus. If they had had what you define as a proper contingency of 30%, which I think you used the term 30 being a conservative number, Would the numbers have pretty much balanced out then to where we're at?
I guess, first of all, I just need to qualify that consideration of what an appropriate contingency might be was out of the scope of our work, but a contingency at that time of around 30% would be more appropriate, in my personal view, than the contingency that was provided for. One of the things with project performance that's important to note, a project can still be delivered well, but if the constraints in terms of scope, budget and schedule at the beginning of the project are not appropriate, then project performance can be deemed to be could be deemed to be poor. So, for instance, if you don't allow adequate contingency at the appropriate stage of the project, it shouldn't be a surprise when the project comes in over budget.
For that clarification. Last question. It was alluded to on page 13. The project manager told us that in his view, the $105 million redevelopment budget was inadequate. And I know we're throwing around all sorts of terms, project manager, project director, it's very confusing. But I'm assuming in this situation, you are referring to the engineer with the WPS, Abdul Aziz.
That's correct.
Okay. The question is, are you aware that Mr. Aziz, along with AECOM, made a presentation in a council seminar telling us that they could build this for $105 million?
We understand that there was that presentation. We were not aware that both were there.
So you see the strategy there. Well, we were talking about that for $105 million. The mayor leaving out the part where there were important components to the project that were left out of the specs. So of course it was lowball. And you heard what they said about contingencies. About, of course, the project's going to become a disaster. So this was it almost looks to me like it was designed for there to be a fall guy. And of course, you know, if there's a fall guy, then there's probably people that can't be made fall guys for reasons of who knows what. Justin Swandel going down that path with the auditors, wanting to convince them there was extremely great value about the work done by somebody to the tune of $250,000. Watch this.
As a percentage of a project of this size, where does that type of service usually come in as a percentage of the project?
It's not usually a function of a percentage of the capital cost of the project. It's more a function of the cost of the resource. So, for instance, you could have a project that's $10 million. It has one project director. That project could be $100 million. You still have one project director. So it comes down to the value of that individual's time.
I have some involvement in a similar sized project. In that case, the cost is roughly 1% of the value of the project, or about 1.5 to 1.7 million. This seems like extremely great value at $242,000 or $262,000. Did it not seem like a very low number to you for project management services or project director services?
When you look at project management, you have to look at everything, not just one individual's salary. There were a number of project managers from the city side as well. Can't comment on value for money.
Of course, the person that Swandel was talking about would be Osama Abu Zaid, Dunmore Corporation, $263,000 to watch over a project that ballooned so out of control. And that was extremely great value for the money. That's the world of Justin Swandel. The recommendation that this move forward to the Provincial Justice Department, and again, those opposed to moving this forward, Cates, Swandel, Nordman, the mayor, the deputy mayor, the acting deputy mayor, the speaker Sharma, and for some strange reason, Harvey Smith. I don't really understand that. This is all about proper procurement not being followed and the risk of single source contracts. In other words, the city can get sued for how business was done, and your taxes are going up. On a personal note, two things. Mike Sutherland, the Police Association, heading into retirement. Our very best to Mike, so supportive of our work in citizen journalism, and this program itself dedicated to a very good friend of all the work I've done in Winnipeg in the last 10 or 12 years, the late David Gutman. God be with you, David. We'll be back with more City Circus replays next week and a new episode back with the new season again in August. Thanks very much.
It's over.